Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Farai Tunuma, and I'm Senior Advisor for Water and Climate Resilient WASH with UNICEF. I'm going to be taking us through this session. It's been probably the first day for most of you. For me, it's been a very exciting day, lots of WASH conversations throughout, and I hope we will be able to maintain a lot of energy in this session. Just to mention and acknowledge a lot of our partners, a lot of the governments that we work with as UNICEF, and really welcoming you all to this session. So this session is going to focus on water security in the Horn of Africa. We are going to go through a very quick agenda, a bit of a discussion around water fragility in the region, why the Horn of Africa is special and an important part for us to really zoom into today. We will also hear from Yasmin on the perspectives of the youth in the region, how they interface with water security related issues, and why this is an important issue for them. We will then talk a bit around the solutions that are coming through in the Horn. The More Water, More Life project is one that we'd like to zoom into, and we'll talk about some of the transformation and innovation that we are seeing happening within that region through that program. We'll then move into some of the livelihood opportunities, perspectives, really hearing from the communities and practitioners within that region. And for that bit, we will be speaking to our counterparts in Eritrea, as well as some of the very experienced drillers in that region. In between, we'll be hoping to have some conversations, questions coming from people on the floor, and we will, of course, have an amazing panel to wrap it all up. So without taking too much time, I will just quickly give a quick introduction of why we are focusing on the Horn of Africa and why it's really important to reflect, particularly when we think about conflict and peace building and how else water can really be a lever of all these important elements. So as I mentioned, I work for UNICEF. And for UNICEF, we are constantly putting communities at the center of our work. We are often very concerned when there is a loss of livelihoods. And over the past few years, we've really heard about the Horn of Africa, loss of livestock, loss of livelihoods, and what it means for the child is that household income is depleted. They often are now out of school. They are moving to locations where they might be able to find water with their families. And of course, this journey of migration is quite a challenging one. We see quite a lot the impact of climate variability in that region. We are starting to see a lot of unequal distribution of rainfall. We are starting to see more pronounced flooding sometimes, but also alternate drying very quickly. This picture behind me just shows how life within the Horn of Africa can be at some of these very intense periods. Drought is not the only problem that we have in that region. We see a lot of change in land use degradation. Again, from that picture, you can see not much vegetation, not even a bit of shade, which does, give us all these basic benefits on a day-to-day basis. So when you're in an area like this, it is really important that you have access to groundwater resources. And even those are often dried up. Where we had water wells, they now can no longer access water because the depths at which we are finding water are becoming lower and lower with every passing year. And often our infrastructure is also not able to keep up with these very rapid but also unpredictable changes that we start to see. When we want to work at scale, evidence generation, information, data analysis becomes very, very important. And when we now start to think about the unseen and in the context of WASH, unseen groundwater, data around that is even more challenging. Monitoring systems are not in place. We have that rapid decline of groundwater that I've spoken about. We also see a lot of poor coordination and governance, be it amongst the government at the different levels, within the agencies and development partners that also work within the region. And that doesn't really help the situation. Climate change. What would the water discussion be without talking about climate change? And within the Horn, it becomes a reality. And of course, when we talk about putting in resources like climate finance in this particular context, it's even way, way harder. So when we are in a region like this today, we are going to focus on what does the lack of water mean for communities, particularly from the lens of a young person. How do we really work at enhancing water security in that region so that we are able to uphold the socioeconomics of that region and really reduce fragility and conflict? We do know that water itself can be a builder of peace, but where there is societies or communities competing for water resources, it can also be that driver of conflict. So how do we build peace in this region using water as the lever of progress and really build these communities so that we create a brighter future? So as we go through the session today, I will not say a lot more. I will now hand over to Yasmin to briefly introduce herself and, of course, take us through a youth perspective from the Horn. Over to you, Yasmin.
Good afternoon, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully, you're all doing well after this long, long day. And I thank Farai for summarizing most of my points because my first few slides were about fragility in the region. But I would like to speak more about youth and how water security affects youth in the Horn of Africa. So I think Farai already mentioned most of this, but I just wanted to highlight where exactly is the Horn of Africa for those of you who do not know. So it consists of those highlighted countries. And what was interesting to me is the Horn of Africa has vast natural water resources, yet has chronic water stress, So it has the largest lake in Africa, the longest river in the world, the longest coastline in mainland Africa. Despite that, it suffers from water chronic stress. And I think Farai has already mentioned due to water management issues, political and economic instability, competition resources in ethnic, regional, and religious groups. So I would like to, so this is where I would basically start. So this, sorry guys. So I think multitasking is not my strong suit because I was trying to go through the slides and go through the slides at the same time. Anyway, so this is the GDP of Africa. As you can see, Somalia and Ethiopia heavily depend on agriculture. So with a country that is suffering from water resources, limited water resources, this means that the economy is vulnerable to collapse. So when there's no access of water, that means lack of employment for the youth. That means lack of jobs, loss of livelihoods, health, education, and etc. So I would highlight this other data. Recently, in 2022, 4.9 million children are out of school due to water-related issues. So as you can see, as early as December 2023, and I think there's more data after that, 876,000 in Somalia alone, school was affected. So that causes them to drop out of school. So this is a study done by ISS Africa, where he discusses, where they basically show the region, so the enrollment rate that is in the first slide, and then at the end you can see that is the end of education. So for example, highlighting Somalia, 94.8% enrollment rate during their primary years, but as the years go by, only 1.7% graduate from school. This is due to environmental concerns and various other factors. Another factor is health. When there's no agriculture, when there's no crop, livestock production, when there's no access to water, that means malnutrition comes, and then there's vulnerability to diseases. 6.6 million people face water shortages, causing a spike in cholera cases in Somalia right now. So I want to ask you to ask yourself a question. What were you doing when you were 13 years old? What was your main concern? What did you think about? For young girls in the region, in the Horn of Africa, their biggest concern is survival. Because in the region, the young girls burden the bear of collecting water through long distances. So this causes many risks. It could cause gender-based violence, kidnapping, lack of education, and various other factors. This is a recent statistic done in Somalia. 45% of the youth, of the women aged 20 to 24, are married when they're young. Basically, their life is like a currency. This is because they're used as, I don't know how to put this, but the younger the girl, the higher the bride price. This is so unfortunate. So the family uses them as a survival strategy. This is also because it's very normalized. Social norms, fear of insecurity, and various other factors. This also leads to youth migration. A lot of refugees in different Western countries, Eastern countries, whatever. And despite that, interestingly, only 6.4% said they migrate due to environmental factors. But we cannot overlook the fact that indirect implication that environmental factors has on the economy. So when there's water shortages, when there's drought, when there's flood, with water insecurity, this in turn affects the environment. And this in turn affects the economy. So it's not only 6%, but it's higher than that, but it's the lack of knowledge and the lack of connecting the dots that makes them think that the economy is the only reason they're fleeing. This is a very good poem from a Somali poet, Warsan Shire. She says, "No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. When you only leave home when home won't let you stay." And this is a reality in a lot of the areas, not only in Horn of Africa, but general Somalia, general population. So despite the overwhelming challenges, youth took matters to their own hands. I'm only going to highlight two of them, but there are a lot of them in Somalia and across the Horn of Africa, where they talk about different things they've done, be it advocacy, activism, or policy. For example, Somali Youth Hub. Currently, they're drafting the National Youth Statement of Climate Change in El Khoi, Africa. That is the first El Khoi done in Somalia. Actually, they've never ever done one before that. So this is so interesting, and they're going to take it to COP with a draft national statement of the Somali youth and what they want to say. They've also recently done the Summit of the Future, which is going to happen in September in New York. And they have taken the national Somali youth and told them, what are your concerns? So they have brought them together, and they have done policies. They have been included in different policies as well, such as NDCs, NAPs, and environmental policy, biodiversity, and all the policies. Somali Greenpeace Association is another youth-led organization in Somalia. They've also taken matters to their hands. They have done over 50,000 trees, I think, since 2020, across the community, across the Somali region. They have gone to different regions, and they have educated them on the importance of planting trees in their house. They have educated them on the benefits it has on the future generation. Because you have to remember that most of these areas lack the knowledge and understanding of what climate change is, or what causes deforestation. Like, I'm cutting trees, but they do not register sometimes that this is what is causing the problem. So this youth went to different schools, went to different communities, did capacity building, and said, We know the solution. Please, let's plant more trees. So I think I went through that very quickly because I'm already done. Maybe that's good for you, though. You can go home early. So I think I've spoken about the challenges. And so what are the recommendations? So first and foremost, public-private partnerships. I think where the youth are included. So I think youth have a lot to say. They have a lot of ideas. They have a lot of projects, but they do not have someone listening to them. So this will be a great initiative. Localize solutions and build capacity. This means that the solutions have to be specific. It's not generalized, specific to the region. One region is not the same as the other. Invest in youth-led water and climate solutions. I think that is, I've already basically went through that point. But just recently, before I left, I was speaking to university students in Somalia. And one of them told me, I want to start a project on hydropower in Beledweyne region where there's always flooding. And I told her, what's stopping you? She said, money. Lack of support from the government, lack of support from institutions. No one has belief in youth. No one's willing to take that risk. So she cannot go on. And that is not only her, there's a lot of Somali youth going on that region. So the other thing I would say is promote green jobs and innovation hubs. So sustainable agriculture, renewable energy, solar panels. I think this would solve a lot of the employment issue going on in Somalia and also the water issue. Innovation hubs are very important because they need mentors and leaders when they're opening their businesses. They need to understand the process they have to go through. They cannot do it on their own. So having innovation hubs, technology hubs, this would be very good. Policy inclusion and advocacy. Despite being included in some of the policies, I think youth should be included and should be in the table to make decisions. So this is not only national policies, this is also international policies. So they should be included, make the decisions, and advocacy and awareness, I think that's what we're only doing as youth right now. So I would like to reiterate and say that more than 60% of the youth in Somalia, of the population in Somalia is youth, the whole population. That means 70% of the solution. I think the youth have a lot to say. So with that, I will say, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, any questions, I think, from the online and yeah? Yeah, I'm not gonna stay. I'm joking. If there's any questions, let me know. All right. Oh, thank you. Oh, that's interesting.
I think, can you hear me? Can everyone hear? Okay, like this?
Oh,
Okay,
I could
all
hear
right.
you.
So I was saying that I've been working over 10 years with climate youth, from Vanessa to Greta, and I truly think that they have moved forward the climate crisis so much. And now, the more I hear the youth in this summit, the more I understand that you guys are also leading the water crisis. So I have two questions for you. The first one is, it looks like soon it might be appointed a water envoy at the UN for the first time ever. So I was wondering what would be your demands for that UN water envoy. The second one is to what extent you are joining forces with the climate youth to unify the messages, because we know how the climate change fight is so well understood and developed, and conventions, it's a complete different story. So I wanted to know if you have built those bridges and how is it going? And again, thank you so much for your inspiring presentation.
Thank you, thank you. I think I can just answer that then. So it's great that you've been working in this for a long time. And I think Water Envoy, that is a very, very important position for the youth to have. So I think most of the discussion today was about water insecurity and the causes that it brings. So one of the things I would say is, for the Water Envoy, is to create more opportunities for the youth. So for example, if there are more water projects that the youth can be involved in, that they can be supported in, water decision making, like water policies included in the decision making, basically. So the other question, I think, is what else can we do as a youth, did you say?
No, the linkages between you and the climate youth.
Okay. So I currently work for the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change in Somalia. recently we appointed a youth focal point finally, so that they can deal with the Ministry of Youth and various other focal points in the Ministry of in the ministries in the region. So the linkages is, when the youth are involved in the government, they are involved in policy making, they can in turn translate those messages representing their peers. So I know there's a lot of youth, and youth are always shouting everywhere, and people are like, oh, it's just... But then I feel like they have a lot to say. The reason they have to make noise is because no one is listening. So I think those are the linkages, is the more noise you make, the advocacy, and yeah. I hope I answered that right. Yeah, so yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Room?
I love it.
No more questions. I think we must really give a big hand. We've just had an amazing bearing of the soul coming out from Yasmin. Really huge congratulations. And it's so great to have such inspiring leaders emerging in our countries and really pushing, not just making noise, but actually being part of the solution. So really huge congratulations. And I think a huge congratulations to Somalia also for really then allowing you the space to operate, and of course the youth initiatives that you have been able to share with us today. So we quickly now invite Regional Advisor for East and Southern Africa, Kitka Goyal, to come and tell us more. What are the solutions coming from the water sector in the Horn to deal with this crisis?
Thank you, Farai, and good afternoon, everyone. Mine is hopefully simple. I'll be talking about an initiative, an approach that has been developed to try and find where the water exists in this area that we're talking about, which is the Horn of Africa, and then how we hopefully will manage it and make it usable for the populations. We called it the More Water, More Life initiative, but certainly it's all about looking at where the water exists. So what's the challenge? What we've seen in the Horn of Africa is about 25 million people are vulnerable to issues related to access to water. And they depend at times of crisis on water trucks that deliver water from long distances, or the use of donkey carts to bring water to them. It's not just about that difficulty, but what is even more is the cost associated with that. We have seen in certain communities where the cost of water has increased by over 400% at times of crisis. People are forced to make difficult choices on what to spend the limited resources they have on. Is it going to be on food? Is it going to be on healthcare? Is it going to be on school fees for children? Or is it going to be on water? We've seen in some of those instances where over 95% of groundwater sources drying up because they are shallow, and so the water has depleted and it cannot be accessed. Where the aquifers are deep, as we all know, there are issues associated with the cost of drilling to reach those areas, but even more so is the difficulties of the success rate of hitting the right target to get where the water is. This compounds the whole situation and makes it really a challenge for everyone. And we have seen how it impacts on the whole livelihoods in the areas. Some of the challenges we witness also is that water has been weaponized in those areas, and where it is used as a bargaining chip in some cases. We've had situations where drilling crews and their equipment have been taken hostage in exchange for access to water. We've seen where even lives have been lost by some of these crews as a result of that. It's really complex in the sense that in the context of Somalia, for example, where this water resource is managed by clans. And so if another clan is having any differences with the other one, they could easily use that as a way of showing power by taking charge of that kind of a system. We therefore came up with this issue of how do we find where the water is? And the More Water, More Life initiative is one that has built on the history and has built on the knowledge that has been built in the region on how to find where the water exists. It's basically a three-staged approach where we look at first acquiring the data and the information. Now, because of the complex hydrogeology in the area, depending on the normal hydrogeological maps, geophysics to site where the well is, has proven to be not very efficient. And we've had success rates of about 50%. But the additionality to this has been the use of satellite data and overlaying it on these existing maps to now come up with what we call water suitability maps. And it's basically a traffic light system that looks at highest areas of probability with the green, areas of lower, medium probability with yellow, and those that are red are considered no-go areas. And this has significantly improved the success rates of siting the wells. Now, it's not as simple as I said. Overlaying data means doing some sort of analysis, and we've got the experts, hydrogeologists, and the kind of sociologists that also look at demand for that water, existing land use practices, where all of these data are put together, they are analyzed, and those groundwater suitability maps are developed. Once they are developed, then we concentrate on the green areas to really do detailed studies and find where the highest points of success would be to drill the boreholes. And once they are then drilled, the water is now made available for use for communities. What we have seen is a significant improvement in the success rates. And today we have gone over 80%, getting to 90% of success in using this methodology to site. So far, we have, through this particular project, only spent about $13 million on doing the hydrogeology and the mapping and all of that, to the drilling of about 17 wells, and out of which 15 have been successful. So again, you've seen that success rate that we're talking about. And we've got an additional 15 wells to drill to really build that body of knowledge about this methodology and make sure that it is something that we can use to support the governments in using it to site their wells. So far, all the water quality tests from these 15 successful wells have been good, and they are potable enough to be used for drinking. Now, looking at the overall methodology that we have used on this particular project, it shows there is potential. It shows there is room for scaling. There is room for involving others. And how can we do this? It's only by making sure that we involve the financing experts to look at what are the possibilities of drawing on the private sector to invest in this kind of methodology, to scale it, bring it to scale, and make the water available for people. We need to de-risk some of these ways of working so that it becomes it's attractable for loan investments from the financial sector, so that we can then develop these systems and make it available. Now, an example that we have is in northern Kenya, in a place called Wajir. It's a town that has a population of about 90,000 people. We have seen that at the peak of the drought crisis that they've just gone through, they spent about 25% of their disposable income on accessing water every month, which translated comes to about $18 per month. Now, for a household in that area, that is significant. It's a lot of money. And we've seen if we invest in this methodology, where we are able to site a good aquifer, drill the well, develop the water system, and have it operated in an efficient manner within 2 to 5 years, the cost of the capital investment would have been recouped. So definitely there is potential for it. Now, we want to therefore conclude by saying that this approach is one that we can really look at as a group and look at how best to expand it, to bring it to scale, because the approach has proven to be successful. It improves efficiencies, and there is potential for attracting private sector financing to it. It is bankable. It is something that if a private sector, if someone puts money into, the chances of success and recouping of the investments are very high. So the message is we can make it, we can scale it up. So let's work together, let's put our heads together to make it a success. Thank you.
Off stage, we do have a few minutes, and I wanted to check in the room any questions for Kitka. Oh, yes, some questions.
Yes, thank you very much. Very interesting. I had a question regarding the sustainability of the project, because one thing is to identify the areas where you've got a piezometric resource. The other thing is the regression of the resource. So I wanted to know if you had also some piezometric surveillance with probes in order to anticipate, the degradation of the resource. That was my first question. And the second one is about the typology of geophysics you are using in the Horn of Africa, knowing all the issues about salinity. I mean, for example, do you use direct geophysics or not? Thank you.
Great. And the good thing is you are sitting just beside our expert hydrogeologist, so Jay will chip into the second question. But certainly on the issue of sustainability, this has been one of the greatest considerations. Are we depleting the resource, or is it one that is recharged over time? And there are things we have started to look at to try and give us that assurance on if we are mining the water or actually it is water that is being recharged. So please watch the space. We are going to get more data and information around that. But one of the things we've started doing is looking at the environmental and social impact of some of these projects. And where we see the risks are quite high, we also look at management plans for it to make sure that we do not deplete the physical environment in the first place. But certainly the issue of aquifer depletion is one that is one of our topmost considerations, and we are gathering the data to try and build the body of evidence to assure us that these sources of water are going to be sustainable in the longer term. On the second question, please, Jay, if you don't mind.
The mic, please. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Actually, I'll answer both questions a little bit without giving any data away.
Yeah.
So there's been a dating study done on, I think, in both Somalia and Ethiopia. So that's stable isotopes and tritium dating, but it's an inconclusive.
Yeah.
We need to look at the data again before sharing it, because sustainability is a big question. With the second question, the geophysics. So I'm not a geophysicist, I'm a hydrogeologist, but they have used methods which go down to, they can explore to about 300 to 500 meters. So it's not your standard ELT, that there are other methods which have been used. Yeah.
We have some questions online. So the first one is, who will be leading and coordinating on this? The government's capacity is very low in managing different water schemes, which is a challenge in the Horn of Africa. It would be good if you can speak a bit about the actors and their specific responsibilities. Thank you.
Great. It's not UNICEF that will be managing and leading on it. It's certainly going to be the government departments responsible for water resource management that will be. And all of this work, from the inception, from the collection of data, we've talked about the overlay of the data to come up with those groundwater suitability maps. Each stage is validated by peers, both the expert hydrogeologists or experts from abroad, but certainly with local water practitioners. And whatever data, whatever maps are produced, they are handed over and left with the local authorities in those particular areas as well, so that they keep using that for their water resource management in the future, not just for this particular project. So this is the aim behind all of this. We are very hopeful that these skills will be passed on and will be retained within those local experts and the local institutions in the countries.
I have one more question online and then we'll come back to the room, mainly because I really like this question and I've got the microphone, so I can. Why work with the private sector instead of strengthening water utilities? Privatization of water is not a solution. And before Kitka answers, I'm going to say that Austin is going to talk maybe a little bit touch on some of this, maybe, coming from Xylem and the private sector. You can represent the whole of the private sector in this room if you would like, Austin. No pressure. Sorry, Kitka, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Utilities, I think, again, we are very delighted to see this topic coming up, because we've seen a lot of investments in wash infrastructure that go to waste virtually after a year or two. One, because of lack of operation and maintenance, lack of the skills, lack of the financial models to manage them as well. So UNICEF increasingly is looking at working with partners, working with the private sector to build capacities around sustainable management systems. And one of those ways is through the utility approach. Because again, we need specialized skills to manage these new big infrastructure that we are putting in place. We're not going to depend on the volunteer WASHCOM or the water committees to do it just, as volunteers. We need the skilled personnel to do it. We need managers to run these kind of systems that look at the asset management systems, look at their bookkeeping systems, look at operation and maintenance of the high-tech equipment they use. So we need utilities to do this, and it is the private sector that has the skills to manage and improve the skills of those utilities to run them.
Just to complement Kitka, I'm sure there's also a huge space for the government, also a huge space for the communities. When we just think about, let's see if I'll succeed. Yes, if we just think about this last balloon that Kitka shared with us, you can really see there's a space for all of us. And one of the things about this session which we didn't talk about was we wanted to do this together. So maybe very quickly, let's just get a sense of who's in the room. Yeah. If you are from a community, raise your hand up. I'm sure we all come from a community of sorts. So I'm in that group.
Not from...
But not from this one, but from a community. Yes.
Yeah.
Are you from the Horn of Africa? Do we have Yasmin, proudly, Horn of Africa? Yes. So we do have people from the community. Private sector, are we here? Yes, we are. Innovative financiers, or financiers, maybe innovative might be too much. Financiers, yes. People who work with WASH institutions and really build their capacity. Okay, so I do think we are sitting with solutions for the Horn of Africa. Thank you, Kitka, very much for your input. I think we are now going to move into a section where we try to reflect a little bit more. A little bit more on the livelihood opportunities in the Horn of Africa. Yes.
When I got into the profession in the 80s, late 80s, most of the assessments in the dry areas were very difficult. Then there were no maps, there were no suitable maps. We were just using the usual survey maps. The fieldwork was normally very difficult also because of access to the areas. And it was very tedious, very cumbersome. You'll find the drilling was not done optimally, and many times you'll find the results were not very good, and some boreholes could be left incomplete because of not using the correct technology for the drilling. You would find one borehole takes 6 months to drill, to complete, say up to 300 meters. Other challenges in drilling, for instance, is lack of adequate training, where most of our drillers and technical staff are not properly trained. During my career, I've seen a lot of developments, especially in the drilling sector. Over the years now, the percussion drilling rigs have been replaced by more robust rotary drilling rigs. And sometimes you find rigs that can do 200 meters in one day, 300 meters. So the production nowadays, you find there is very rapid development. You can have a rig producing a borehole in every 2 or 3 days. The other thing that has changed is also the cost of the drilling. You find it is many times cheaper to drill today than it was that time. And this is related also to the technology, the length of time it used to take to do the drilling. And of course, there was not much competition because there were only a few borehole drilling companies in Kenya. The number of boreholes being drilled, probably 30 years ago, it was only about 200 boreholes in a year. Today, we are looking at least 3,000, 4,000 boreholes drilled in a year. More Water, More Life program is using modern technology that happens to resolve some of the gaps in terms of accuracy, in terms of coverage, and in terms of the speed with which water resources assessment are being done. Overall, in this region, there has been a major improvement in the drilling value chain. Consequent from the improved technology, we have seen an increase in the number of drilling companies, improved numbers in terms of number of boreholes, increased operations, especially in terms of manufacturing of borehole materials like casings, also assembly of drilling equipment, including rigs. It is giving opportunities to communities to improve their water sources. And this will directly intervenes in the livelihoods, in the quality of life. The next generation will have to scale up all these enable more research to be done, and also picking lessons from the experiences of the past, taking trends to inform decisions, and working together globally to ensure that we can track the new technologies and use it to advance the socio and economic development of their countries.
So I certainly did not do justice to the introduction of that video. That is Mr. Gicheru, a very dear colleague who we work with in the Horn of Africa region. Mr. Gicheru, as you can see, has worked in that region for many, many years without giving up his age. And of course, he really appreciates some of the strides that have been made through the Horn of Africa program. I think for me, what is most amazing is the numbers that he talks about in terms of how much borehole exploration and drilling is actually happening in the region. And that really does talk to how we start to manage all these boreholes much more systematically, whether it's the data that is being collected during the drilling process, the monitoring of water levels that we are seeing through that process, the operations of these systems, and really ensuring that water services and water resources are sustained in that area. So when you do make the links with the socioeconomics of that region, there is certainly more potential. And as UNICEF, our investment is just really a drop in the ocean and to really serve to trigger more to actually happen in that region. So that was his reflection. We now move a bit to hear from communities that are also within that same region on how they are also taking up some of these matters into their own hands so that they are able to ensure sustained and sustainable services and water security for their own communities. We move to Eritrea for what they are doing. Over to you.
Eritrea, located in Africa's drought-prone regions, characterized by limited water resources due to its physiographic setting and geological formation. Climate change has worsened this with unpredictable rainfall and frequent droughts. A 30-year war for independence further scarred the land and depleted resources. After independence in 1991, the government has focused on community-based sustainable development strategy. In line with this, different nature-based solutions like managed aquifer recharging structures, ponds, check dams, terracing, rehabilitation and restoration of riverbeds, planting trees, and establishment of enclosures to address the water scarcity and ecosystem rehabilitation. Dekashai is a village located 40 kilometers from Asmara with 6,000 residents. It is one of the exemplary villages on nature-based solutions to address their water scarcity. In the 1970s and 1984, Dekashai faced severe droughts and responded by digging a well and building a small dam. In 2004, Water Resource Department, with UNICEF Eritrea's support, upgraded the well with generator pumping, a 75 cubic meter reservoir, and 4 distribution points. The WASH Committee later expanded this to 12 points and electrical power system.
ጠቕላላት ናይ ስክፍታ ናይ ማይ ትሕቲ ባይታ እንዳንቆልቆሎ ኮይኑ ድሕሪኡ መጽናዕቲ ትሕቲ ባይታው ምስ ገበርና እቲ ናይ ትሕቲ ባይታ ዝኾነ ማይ ኩሉ ኣብ ስክፍታ ዳርጋ ብዘለሉ ኣብ 4 ቦታ መጽናዕቲ ምስ ገበርና የለን ተባሂሉ
ብፍላይ ማይ ሰበይትን ከዓ ካይዲና ኣብ 2018 እዚ ህዝቢ እዚ ኣዝዩ ናይ ማይ ፀገም ፈጢሩ ካብዚ መንገዲ 6 ሰዓት ንዓዲ ወርሒ ሰብ ካብዚ ጀሪካናት ሒዘን ኣንስቲ ፀገም ንዓና ተባቢዕና ተፀገም መምህር ኮይኑ ኣብ ረህዋ ከብጣሕና ክደፋፈ ነዚ ክንፅዕር ዝገበረና እቲ ናይ ክሊማ ምዝንባዕ ለውጢ ማይ ፅምኢ ዘምፅኦ እዩ ነብዚ ከምዚ ተኣምራዊ ነገር ክንሰርሕ ድኻል እቲ ዓዲ ክልተ ምርጫ ጥራሕ ኮይኑ ወይን ብደለዎ ፅዒሩ ውሕስነት ማይ ምግባር ወይን ካብዚ ዓዲ ምግዓት እቲ ዓዲ ተኣኪቡ ሕጂ ብደለና ዓቕሚ ገንዘብናን ኣብ ደገ ዘሎ ኣሕዋትና ናዋሃሂድና ዲጋ ክንሰርሕ ኣለና ኢሉ ሓሲቡ
Dekashai village is rocky, steepy, and with shallow aquifer. The improvement of social services, water supply, health, education, electricity, and road led to population growth with increased water demand and consumption. To solve this water shortage, the community with the leadership of WASH Committee implemented different nature-based solutions that included check dams, micro dams, ponds, planting trees, and terracing. In 2019, they decided to build a dam with a capacity of 250,000 to harvest rainwater to recharge the aquifer and address the demand of animal watering. The dam cost 467,000 USD, out of which 43% is covered by community. Dekashai's efforts showcase the power of nature-based solutions to alleviate the water scarcity with community leadership and full participation. Long before these practices gained global recognition, all these nature-based aquifer recharging interventions has increased the well's yield from less than 0.5 liters per second to 3 liters per second. And in total, the community secured 8 liters per second from the 3 wells. This yield has been sustained since 2019. In addition, the biodiversity and ecosystem of the village has improved. The village engaged everyone, including the youth, in this comprehensive water management effort.
هركت سرعتني من سيد العلاقة سرح له زعدي نوح نزغنا مداي مالتي الصغير غاي أبزي النسبيرو نديقو كل حيل من سيد أبزي بسحنا له
دنا برات أجمع نفطوين حجز كابكم ممكن دحر دقينا كلها هنا بتتبه لنا يوم صارحتاتنا حيزنا أفتوه لنا يبغى تقيدنا سرح لنا بي.
The upgraded water supply system now delivers water directly to households.
حنتي جزاء فتقطع تقيا قصاري ثلاثة. زفق أدل ما يكاني. إسران حمشتن في استوي حمشتن يتركب بنورحي. كابز تحلفون حقي ما تحازم قواس أنا سلد لنا تقصاري سلد لنا تهزبون تردي أوه يخيس سلد لون بزوحة مقطعتنا بكال مداباتن أي أتوني.
Dekashai's success in aquifer recharge and water management is a powerful testament to community resilience and innovation in nature-based solutions. Their story demonstrates that with unity and determination, even the most challenging problems can be overcome.
زعدزي أمسكينو بتقول بتزرع أمسكينو بمايو خوريعو أنكون ده أمنقطس أبقى جزانا وليكنا جري كان عرفوا قلعة عرفوا أد كترزوا يعرفونا بمنتاي بسعرنا بتوقع صدق السيخنا زعل طنساتنا أيبلنا حراساتنا أيبلنا مغنياتو تهاج إنك ما يخرع الناس لازم ولا ما يثلي خط عنا الله ما يكي حسكا فأهيوت لازيلو إنما يكن بالجن سعرنا أبقى جزانا قرعناها حليفنا هبتنا خلصت لنا معنا.
Dekashai village is one of the exemplary communities and community-led and nature-based solutions to sustain climate-resilient water source and water supply, and lessons learned from it is well documented, and it will be adopted and customized at national level. And the government of Eritrea, in the collaboration with the relevant stakeholders and partners, is committed to effectuation of the community-led and nature-based solution for climate-resilient water and environmental system.
UNICEF Eritrea supports the empowerment of communities and enhancing of their knowledge. In addition, it will mobilize resource and support WASH interventions to be climate resilient and consider nature-based aquifer recharging mechanisms. Scaling up of innovations in complex settings, ensuring to bring the right people together at the right time. Together, we can turn challenges into triumphs and build a future where every community thrives.
A huge contrast. So we started off with the big infrastructure, big investments, drilling to hundreds of meters. And now we end with a lovely depiction of the other approaches that we can also take, where the geology allows us, where we do have the shallower groundwater resources, and where, of course, communities are also able to take life into their own hands and really move forward with nature-based solutions, really look after the environment with managed aquifer recharge, and really, really support sustainability of services. We now move very quickly into the panel discussion. We want to bring it all together. Our discussion today is really about how we move forward together. We have already heard from the questions a huge interest into really hearing a bit more from private sector. So at this moment, I actually call upon Austin from Xylem to share with us a bit about their own reflections of what they see in the Horn, how as a partner they are doing what they can to make a difference as part of their contribution. Over to you, Austin. And please introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Farai. Representing the entire private sector. Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name's Austin. I lead sustainability at Xylem. Xylem is a water technology company. We have everything from pumps and meters and treatment equipment and the likes around the world. We have 23,000 employees globally. To give a little bit more color around Xylem and why what I'll be talking about later really ties to our mission, Xylem, we serve about 50% of our revenue comes from utilities, so municipal water, wastewater treatment, and another 30 to 40% or so coming from industrial users of water, corporations that need to treat water for food and bev, et cetera, different types of applications. And so that is really a long-term business. We want to see financially viable utilities across the world so that it is investing in communities for the long run. And that's when we speak about sustainability, of course, in my role and at Xylem, we think about the environmental impacts of our own operations, but we think about sustainability much broader in economic sustainability, community sustainability, the socioeconomic components that we just talked about too. And we believe water plays a key role to that. One area that I have the great pleasure of having responsibility for is our Watermark program. That is our corporate social responsibility and philanthropic program. Just to give you a flavor of the passion of Xylem employees, they're all water nerds like all of us. And 90% of our employees volunteer with water-related causes throughout the year. So they really are passionate about it. And we've committed to giving 1% of our net profits to water-related causes each year. This drives our current WASH goal of supporting WASH access for 20 million people by 2025, and we recently announced to up that to an additional 80 by 2030. So it's something very close to our commitment. We don't think we can be in this business if we are not committed to expanding access. And this really brought us to a relationship with UNICEF in the past several years. We've had a long-standing relationship across the WASH sector with partners in a number of areas, and UNICEF is fairly recent in the 2019-2020 range. But we've found them to be a really thoughtful partner that is not just coming in and doing installations, but really thinking about sustainability in all the aspects that we're talking about. Now, we're like many private sector companies, perhaps. When we were looking at our impact, it's quite easy to think about philanthropic. And we love our philanthropic work. That will continue forever. It is a wonderful aspect of what we do. But we thought this really isn't maximizing our impact. We're an $8.1 billion company. Surely there's more we can be doing to advance innovation in WASH access. And so we, a company full of products and engineers, thought it's surely a product problem. The right product has not been developed for WASH. That's it. I don't need to tell anyone in this room, that's not it. So we went down that path, but really came across its innovation, to be sure, but it's innovation in other areas. It's in business model, it's in finance, and it's in the way we can structure some of these efforts and apply existing solutions in new, creative, innovative ways. So our goal is not only the short-term WASH goals that I just spoke to, and providing those access who do not have it today, but we're really about long-term viability. We want utilities around the world to be financially viable and have the talent and capacity to run on their own for years to come. For us, this is an investment that should play out 10, 20, 30 years from now as we invest in regions where we want to have people and solutions in the long term as well. So we partnered with UNICEF in the East Africa region with the RWASH program. I won't go into the details of that program specifically because the expert's right there. But we came in with how can we use our initial philanthropic funding to catalyze some of this work, paired with some of our regional technical assistants, our experts in the region that can help support some of this work, and with a long-term eye of developing capacity of organizations and utilities that can then, in the future, run on their own. So we're really excited to where that program is going because, like I said, we're really invested in this for the long run. We want to be working in this region for many years to come, and we think this is the right kind of innovation and approach to building WASH access. So, thank you.
I'm sure for colleagues who asked the private sector question, we now have a different lens around how we can get private sector to do more within the WASH space. But we will still hear more from Austin in the next segment. Innovative finance. This has come up a few times, and this is probably one of the spaces where, as WASH practitioners, we are least confident of the possibilities. So I'm really happy to be calling Alex from our Office of Innovation. He will tell us a bit more about how he sees the WASH problem and how we need to tackle it with a different lens.
Thank you. Monday, 5 p.m. and innovative financing. I guess all of you are, wow, they're very excited. I'm going to do my best to present in an exciting way, if it's possible. Was another person which raised his hand, innovative financing? What do you work with? Where are you from? Okay, great. It's not many of us, so when someone raises hands, wow, it's another, another innovative financing. And you didn't ask about governments. How many are government representative here? Okay, so there's few government, few private sector. First of all, good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you, previous presenters, Jasmine, for very important topic. Youth are important, and I'm going to talk about innovative financing connected to youth. But when it comes to WASH, because innovative financing is about profitability, so as soon as there is some sort of profitability, there is money coming in some way or another, then you can mix. Then you can finance the project not only with grants, but you can do it with loans and investments. And why I take the topic off of profitability, when it comes to education and water, there isn't much profitability. And hence, a lot of innovative financing, it's done within the energy sector. Green bonds, and most of the DFIs focus on energy investments. But that's changing. More Water, More Life, which Kitka presented, we heard that 1/3 of households' income are spent on water. So if we can support a project which will bring the price down for households, so they don't need to spend 1/3, maybe 20%, but still there is a flow of capital then we can involve private sector for long-term sustainability, operation and maintenance, and mix the private sector investment with financing from banks, with grants from UNICEF and governments to set up blended financing solutions, which are more sustainable than what historically we have seen if it's only grant-funded projects. When it comes to water and sanitation, we can categorize innovative financing in several categories. We have the large-scale project finance, which is more water, more life. Usually one project which costs more than $50, $60 million. The way you implement that kind of project is a little bit different to SME support. So then another category of innovative financing is when you support SMEs. And why is that important? Small and medium-sized enterprises, they stand for 98% of all job opportunities. So they create jobs, but they also, in the sanitation service, provide services within the sanitation industry. I'm not a WASH expert, so I'm not gonna, when I use the WASH acronyms, I could say wrong. But when it comes to financing, those small and medium-sized enterprises are very important. Hence, UNICEF also work within that area. So we do more water, more life. We do a revolving fund for sanitation, which is about supporting SMEs with financing. And that can be scaled up by guarantees. So if a government comes in, de-risk the loans, then banks are willing to finance the SMEs. A third category, it's about youth. And in UNICEF Office of Innovation, we actually financed the feasibility study made by KPMG, and we will publish that soon, which shows that young innovators, not only in developing countries, but also in developed countries, are the ones which are missing out from investments. So there is a need to support projects which enhance financing to young innovators. And when it comes to developing countries, that's almost, we looked at 20 different funds which finance innovation, and it was only few of them focusing on young innovators and none of them which finance young innovators in developing countries. So we have a project which will be launched soon called Innovation 30, which addressed that challenge. Did I talk too much, or it's good?
I was willing to hear more.
Okay.
Maybe
I saw Esther saying, time's up.
Yes. So, Alex, we keep you on stage, and I call back Kitka, Austin, and Yasmin back onto the stage. I'm sure everyone is wondering, what sort of a panel discussion is this, where we are hearing from one person to the next and absolutely no questions. Please do come up. At this point, my job is almost done. So I am now handing over to Yasmin, the future,
pressure.
to take us into the future through this panel discussion. Over to you, Yasmin.
All right, hi again. I promise we'll try to keep it short this time. So just 3 questions. You can take it however you like, or I think I would choose the right person. Okay, so young people in the region are affected by the challenges created by climate change and lack of water. The ideas of things that can be done and how to do things differently, but don't have funds or voices in the right places. They don't have people listening to them. So I will start with you. Have you seen missed opportunities to engage youth, or have you created opportunities so that they can have a say in how water challenges are addressed and create opportunities for their future? A lot of opportunities there.
Yes, that's quite a difficult one, but I think it's I would say we have seen both. There have been missed opportunities, but there has been also opportunities. Why do I say missed opportunities? Because I think we have come to the realization on the fact that engaging the youth, engaging young people, we sometimes think, oh, they don't have the experience. They don't know. We are the elders. We know about this. We have the technical knowledge, but that is where I see the missed opportunity. However, we have seen changes where the views of young people are taken on board and applied. We have seen the opportunities where, because of the change in the technology and knowledge that is coming up now, skills are now being given to the young people to take on these new challenges of the technologies that are coming up. And I think one common term we hear is green skills for green jobs. And increasingly, it is the young people that are having those opportunities to gain those new skills, to be able to apply them on the new green jobs that are coming up. So I think both ways, there have been missed opportunities, but now I think there's a lot of catching up to be done. And the youth would definitely be part and parcel of whatever is going to be done going forward.
Thank you very much, Kika. Sorry. Well said. So over to you, Austin. How can we increase water finance and investment in the Horn of Africa and the least developed countries at large? Can you outline any strategies to mobilize and encourage private sector partnerships and investment as an investor?
Okay, a meaty one. And maybe I'll leave some of it for the finance expert to also take. I think willingness to, where the private sector, maybe I'll turn your question a little bit in my approach to answer it, and where the private sector, where we should be thinking a little bit more creatively about how we enter these markets or these challenges is how can we use the resources available to us, often something like we've done through philanthropic. We have a lot of flexibility in those funds. And so we're able to do some financing or some funding that can be catalytic, but in ways that other institutions may not be able to. And so it's really, I think, an opportunity to engage private sector and see what is available for those probably smaller bet, but more creative opportunities that then can proof of concept and come in for greater investment in the future. I kind of answered your question.
I think you kind of did. That's okay. So, Alex, you mentioned such a great point where you said there's a new project coming for the youth. So with such project and more projects in the future, hopefully, what do you see my peers and I saying when we sit on this panel in 20 years' time? What do you hope and think the problems we will have addressed be due to projects like this?
I really hope so. I think that I don't want to generalize, but old people like me, we are very good at knowing what works and what not works. We know what's risky, what's not risky, so we pass on that information to our children. But when it comes to doing things in a new way, to find solutions to climate change and other things, I think that's need to come from the youth. And hopefully in 20 years' time, Innovation 30, which is a project which UNICEF has launched, but we will scale it up in the coming years, and perhaps other similar type of projects, we can deliver financing to youth. And some of those solutions will perhaps solve the challenges we are facing today. And now I'm just going to jump over to the previous question because I want to add something there. And when it comes to financing SMEs and private sector, there isn't lack of financing. There is a lot of financing out there. There's lack of de-risking.
Yes.
So banks, they always give you a loan when they know that you have a capacity to repay that loan. Otherwise, they're not going to give you the loan. Here in Sweden or elsewhere is the same thing. But banks always want collateral as well if the unseen happens and you don't repay that loan. And that collateral is often missing. So guarantees and de-risking is really important from governments to increase the appetite of banks to finance. So de-risking instruments are really needed from many governments. And if you're a government from a donor country, please increase your volume of guarantees.
Thank you very much. I think that was very well said. Any questions from the audience? Yes, please.
You've already asked one. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak before I give it to Jean? I'm happy to let him speak again, but I just want to check there's no other questions first.
Online?
See?
Hi, this is Christoph Schmant from the EU Water Facility, and I think I'm going to jump on and piggyback on Sean's question, but I think and this is actually connecting the dots with the session you had this morning, the breakfast, which was dealing with climate resilient wash. And so I think there's still the question about sustainability of water resources. It was heightened when we heard the hydrogeologists saying they've upped from 200 a year to 3,000 or 4,000 wells per year. And we're, as I understand it, we still don't have a comprehensive security in the hydrology de-risking. You want to have that to understand what's happening with the aquifer, what's happening with precipitation patterns, all that. And just connecting back to the session this morning where a lot of IFIs were present, and they were being asked and discussing how do you develop climate resilient wash and what does that mean? And they were talking about synergies and cooperation. But it seems to me in the Horn of Africa, from my limited understanding with that region, but I Googled real quickly, Somalia is a low income country, water scarce. It seems to me that gap with water resource management and sustainability, documenting that should be covered by some of the IFIs and the ones that they won't provide finance de-risking, but they will provide project de-risking in the sense helping with your system of remote sensing compiled with existing maps to understand, if we drill in those locations, is it sustainable for the next 20 years? And so I think simple acts, they're simple in the sense that we can say them in one mouthful. Preparing river basin management plans ought to be on the agenda of donors and prepare them in risk and fragile countries as a foundation which then is shared across the community. So the World Bank steps in and does 2 or 3 in these basins. EU steps in and does 3 or 4 in another basin. And these are accessible to all the private sector, all the governments, work to develop with governments, of course, national governments, but then available to utilities. And that forms the basis for sustainable water resource management. Everything else builds on top of that. I thank you for letting me connect the dots, at least in my own mind. And hopefully that is a welcome comment. Thank you.
Oh, it's a great comment, and really thank you for that. But just to let you know, there is an ongoing project right now that is UN in partnership with the World Bank and IGAD, which is the intergovernmental
Development.
government body in the Horn of Africa. It's a partnership between UNDP, UNESCO, UNICEF, and the World Bank, supporting this intergovernmental government body to have a database on groundwater, on water resources actually in the area. And this would then become available to all stakeholders, where this information can be gotten real time, and to support those countries also to look at possible transboundary management of those aquifers that cross across their borders. So this is a piece of work that is ongoing, and we are very hopeful that the results will be available soon, and stakeholders would be able to access that and use it for planning and for management of water resources. But certainly, it's something that has been highlighted as a gap, and there is an ongoing project to look at that. And the issue of aquifer management especially would be one that is key to it, so that we see over time what is the trend. Is groundwater depleting, or is it being recharged? And we know that we say, yes, it's happening and all of that, but do we have it and do we have the data? Again, it's a gap. Maybe it's happening in other parts of the world, but in the Horn of Africa, this is an issue, but hopefully this project would try to address.
Maybe if I can come in also, Christoph, to say from the WASH perspective, we have really not capitalized enough on the need for us to expand our practice as well as knowledge around water resources. And when you look at the example that Kitka shared, where we are saying, how do we rapidly expand water supply systems, particularly where they are most needed, that then becomes our limit, because that's the, it's almost like, do I have enough in the bank to withdraw the cash I need as a WASH sector? And what makes us even more vulnerable as a WASH sector is that we are also the one who needs the least. And we are often not seen to be the biggest economic player. So we are competing with industry, with irrigation. And so we do need to be really on top of understanding what's in that checkbook, so that when people are issuing out this water, we also have a stake, and we are not leaving behind the most vulnerable communities, like the ones that Yasmin has really shown us in this discussion as well. So this is why it's really important for us to have that reflection back to water resources, back to sustainable development of water resources, and safeguarding a sufficient amount for domestic use.
Okay, question. One more question. Oh. Yes.
Sean's going to have to wait, but I know he can voice himself later.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nandita. I'm currently an independent consultant, but I've worn the hat of a small private sector player in Kenya. So I'm based in Kenya. I also come from the DFI as well, so trying to put both mindsets together. Specifically, my question is mostly for the innovative finance aspect, but anyone can answer it. So one of the major gaps, so I come more from the sanitation side, and one of the major gaps we saw while doing any projects is there's innovative financing. There are these beautiful instruments, and then there are people who want to take part in those instruments, but what's really lacking is the innovative contracting. So you can have this amazing mechanism to do a sustainable project, but at the end of the day, if you look at a TOR, it's the same TOR that's been developed for time and again, or the evaluation committee, or just a model of how a small sector, private sector, can come in to actually use those funds, and what sort of model goes into then the equitable sharing of resources, if this is a reuse project, for example, or... So my question to you or anyone is, is UNICEF specifically looking at such contracting models, and how much of your innovative financing is then supporting through whatever technical assistance in contracting these out to governments as well as private sector players?
Well, that's a good question. Can I take it? And when we, as UN or an NGO, set up a revolving fund to fund the SMEs, often we do it small scale. And then it's the same mechanism, TOR, and you have to apply for it. So for us, now when we want to scale it up, we do it through national banks. So it's no longer UN. We are not involved. We bring in a government which de-risk the financing for the local bank, and then it's a nationwide program which support all SMEs within the sanitation, or if it's woman-owned enterprises, or if it's solar panel industry, so the type of industry you want to support. But as soon as you do it through the national systems, through the established banking system, then that type of challenge disappears, and you enable this for all SMEs in that country or the region. But when you do it small scale, then it's the same. And often the information is not even available to everyone. Not all SMEs are not aware that this facility exists even. So yeah, you need to do it through the established systems.
I think that's all for today. Oh.
Yes.
Oh, I think we're running out of time. I'm so sorry. But at least you had a question earlier.
Yeah.
So I think I'll give it over to Farai to close the session.
Thank you very much, Yasmin. Our future is definitely in safe hands with young people like Yasmin, who can ask the very difficult questions and really demand commitment from all of us. So just in closing, I think a big thank you to an amazing crowd. You've really given us a lot of questions to think about as we work on further phases of our work. Also, a big thank you to the crowd online. We have a huge online participation with many great questions coming through. I hope our discussions today have triggered a lot of thinking around finding solutions, thinking about how we can bring in innovation to really deal with the life challenges of young people. For example, in the Horn, we see similar conditions, issues, challenges in the Sahel as well, and many other parts of the world that might not be as expansive as the Horn of Africa that we've focused on today. We are going to be still talking a lot more around innovation. So I am going to invite you all for what we are calling the Innovation Shark Tank. That's going to happen tomorrow at 1400 in A2, level 6. And we will still be talking about innovations in fragile contexts, but we will not just be hearing from UNICEF, which is what we did today. We will be hearing from a wider array of stakeholders and would really like to see you there. So thank you very much for being a good crowd during the most difficult time of the day at the beginning of a very exciting Stockholm World Water Week. Thank you from the team at UNICEF and the team in the field. Have a lovely day.